Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Let's meet Professor Jason Arday. Now, if you don't know who he is making headlines all over social media. He is the youngest black person to ever be anointed a professor at Cambridge University at the age of 37. And this is a big deal, a big achievement, because this is one of the best universities around the world. It's extremely hard to be accepted. And allegedly, he is the youngest black professor to ever be appointed in an 800-year history. Now, since allegations have come out where people's accusing him of plagiarizing his work, even though we don't have a final outcome, a conclusion as to whether he did or not, people have turned from the allegations to dismantling his entire character. They're questioning everything that he's ever said, everything that he's ever done, questioning his autism, when he did and didn't speak, when he did and didn't begin to read, looking into his personal life, bringing up stuff about his wife, clips such as this one. They are also questioning his alleged experiences of racism. So when he reported a few things that allegedly happened, they're now questioning it and discrediting him as an individual.
Holds 5 degrees. Who knows, that might be true. It's been cast into doubt. His problems then, unable to speak from the age of 2 to 11. I spent 10 hours a day in speech therapy 6 or 7 days a week. Now, people have gone back and they said where he lived, well, anywhere in the country, the NHS is not going to give you 10 hours a day, 60, 70 hours a week. That can't be true. Doctors said there's nothing in there. Pointed at him, they said there's nothing in there. He is a vegetable. And then a day before my 12th birthday, I said my first word, hello. Doesn't sound true. He says he was in the BBC series 7 Up, which followed children growing up. That can't be true. The BBC said he wasn't. Reading and writing, I could not read or write till I was 18. Football and snooker, he played both to a professional level, including a brief appearance for Crystal Palace. Seems untrue. Medical diagnoses, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, deaf in one ear, brain tumour removed just before his PhD, a stroke and a broken leg during a marathon. Running, in 2010 and 2013, 2015, he did 30 marathons in 35 days, including, by the way, breaking his leg during one but continuing. 300 miles in 3 days, 600 miles in 6 days, raised more than 5 million. He's now rode back from that. He did water charity work by installing water pumps in Brazil for the charity WaterAid. They said, no, he didn't. We never send volunteers overseas. I haven't even come to this bit, which is the key bit, which is the academic work, large sections of which appear to have been copied. But there's accusations of violent threats. He's been threatened with a knife, physically assaulted. This is at Cambridge, and spat on, had rape and death threats and bananas sent through the Cambridge postal system. He then says, we're nearly there, that someone broke into his faculty wearing a mask, carrying a knife, and say, if you didn't stand down, I'm going to stab you. He tells the Cambridge authorities, obviously they're very worried, they install CCTV cameras everywhere. Then he says it's happened again. They look on the CCTV, they can't see anything at all. So attacked twice or threatened twice by a masked man with a knife. And his mother's house had a pig's head sent to it as a threat. He then names the butcher's shop it was bought from. The newspaper, The Guardian, rings up the butchers and says, did you sell anyone a pig's head? They said, no, that's the kind of thing we'd remember.
Now, one of the first people to make their allegations public is an academic called Nathan Kofnas. And he is somebody who, within his previous work, he has openly said that he believes white Americans to have a higher IQ than black Americans. So essentially, he's saying that black people are inferior to white people when it comes to education and being able to achieve academically. And I feel like that's his work. You know, he's done, race realism and stuff like that. But his views are important because they provide context regarding the way that he thinks, and it could be an answer as to why he's brought allegations against Jason. We don't know if Jason's work is plagiarized or not. We have to wait and see. But I also want to point out that if this is found to be true, then the system needs to be looked into and the way that they operate, because it is very possible that other professors have also plagiarized their work, that they've also copied and cheated. But I do feel like the public scrutiny isn't just down to the allegations, but more so trying to dismantle his character, tear apart everything he's ever done, everything he's ever said. And that's the issue for me, you know. All allegations need to be investigated. If something is brought to light, it deserves an investigation. But allow that investigation to be complete, allow it to be fair, allow other people to be investigated too. And also they need to think about the educational system and the flaws within that and how it needs to be fixed. Now, what I find interesting is not only that the entire public is mocking him, clowning Jason, laughing at him, but I've seen this guy all over TikTok. He's done, I've seen his TikTok and he's done videos. Yeah, multiple videos. He's even pinned them.
I'm going to be happy that I bust, bro. Come on, cuz. I'm not going to lie, because I know it's going to come out in the end, bro. But this guy frauded everything. Hey, Jay, you know, man's probably got sponsors, you know, and they want their money back, bro. Hey, Jay, sorry, bro. Jason's stupid, bro. Hey, bro, he's all over the news, bro. Bro, Jay, it's like you're saying, why would you make her a stupid this, bro? You're going to get caught, bro. Oh, bro, I feel sorry for him, bro. He's got to go into hiding.
And the question I have is, even if you know somebody from school, how is that relevant? What does that mean? A lot of us know each other from school. A lot of us went to school to each other, but it doesn't mean that we had a direct relationship with the person, or we knew, or we know people's entire truth just because we went to school with them. So that's my thoughts. I find it very interesting how, one thing I will say is the Black community is very different to other communities. And I want to highlight that being Black is hard. It's a challenge within itself. You have to work 10,000 times harder than everyone else. And when you go through life, you already have people who aren't going to like you because of the color of your skin. So that's one thing. So when these things are happening and, you know, you get the public scrutiny and people mocking you, I find it interesting how your own people are just waiting for your downfall. You know, they've been waiting on the sidelines the entire time, waiting to hate. And people will congratulate you, but there's people who are also waiting for you to fail, waiting for something to be said about you, for them to come out and point fingers like, oh yeah, I knew him, I knew her, we went to school together, she was this, she was that, he was this, he was that. I just think it's crazy. And there's a big difference in the way that the Black community acts, especially against one another. So people are going to say what they're going to say. There's going to be critics regarding every situation. That's not my argument. It's not, I don't think that, Jason shouldn't be investigated. I think that if there's allegations, it needs to be investigated, but keep the criticism about the allegations, rather than his entire life, his autism, his personal life, what he did and didn't go through, what was and wasn't done to him racially. Do you get what I mean? So that's my thoughts. It has been confirmed that allegedly Liverpool University investigated previous concerns, but they didn't find enough to say that there's been academic misconduct. Okay, so no, he wasn't found doing anything wrong, but now they're investigating again, and it has been said that he has resigned. But has this resignation taken place because of public scrutiny or because he was plagiarizing his work? Who knows? We're yet to find out, guys. But let me know your thoughts about all of this. Comment below. Please subscribe, like, and share. Bye.
So I'm sure some of you have seen the headlines. A disgusting plagiarism smear campaign against Cambridge professor Jason Arday. But before we get into it, let me tell you exactly who this man is. Jason Arday didn't speak until he was 11 years old. He was diagnosed with autism at 3. He didn't learn to read or write until he was 18. He left school with 2 GCSEs in PE and textiles. And by any measure, the system had already written him off a long time ago. But yet he went on to earn a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then a PhD. And last year at 37, he became the youngest Black professor in the entire 800-year history of the University of Cambridge. And this is the story we're constantly sold about how Britain works. Work hard, beat the odds, and the system will reward you. That's meritocracy, apparently. Except meritocracy was never really about merit. It's a story told to people who make it, and used to explain away the people who don't, as if the only thing standing between anyone and success is how hard they're willing to work. Because right now, Professor Arday is facing renewed plagiarism claims that were already referred to two universities, Cambridge and Liverpool John Moores, both investigated, both found no evidence of wrongdoing whatsoever. And Cambridge itself said he had been a victim of, and I'm quoting them, a vile campaign to undermine his credibility. Now, dozens of academics, politicians and public figures, among them Lord Simon Woolley, Professor Kehinde Andrews, Misan Harriman, the MP John McDonnell and Dr. Shola have now signed an open letter in his defense, coordinated by the Good Law Project. And he is not the only one. In 2017, Professor Kehinde Andrews built Europe's first undergraduate Black Studies degree at Birmingham City University. And in 2024, the university closed it, citing low recruitment. And when a master's program replaced it, that got closed too, less than a year after it was launched. And in 2023, Professor Hakeem Addy, the first historian of African descent to ever hold a professorship in Britain, was made redundant when the University of Chichester cut his course. The same year, his book was shortlisted for the prestigious Wolfson Prize. But now let's look at the numbers behind all of this. Just over 1% of professors in UK higher education are black. And of the black academics who do make it into higher education, fewer than 4% ever reach professor. So this was never really about a man's plagiarism case. This is exactly what happens when black scholars build something real. A smear campaign, a course cut, and a job axed. Different universities, different years, but the same outcome. Black excellence dismantled the moment it gets too visible. Because talent was never really the problem. It never has been. But until that changes, we will keep mistaking the survivors.
As a black Oxford grad who faces allegations of DEI every single day, we need to uncover what the media is doing. In a case like this, the role of the media should be to uncover the truth. But instead, what this man is going through is trial by mob justice. Fine, there may be some truth to these allegations, but what should be happening is a proper investigation, not a concerted effort to destroy this man's life. When will the media learn that when they give someone a platform and then tear them down, it never ends well? Because let's be real, there are people out there who genuinely believe that black people are intellectually inferior, many of whom were behind the initial allegations in the first place. And this coverage does nothing but further their agenda.
Jason Arday was Cambridge's youngest black professor. He has now resigned following allegations of plagiarism. He started out with global development delay and autism, which he said prevented him from speaking until the age of 11 and learning to read and write at 18. And he had a meteoric rise through academia. But following investigations from Dave Harris from the Times Higher Education, journalists and others, he has been accused of plagiarism and making up or at least having errors about his background information. Others have pointed out that they feel that this is a bit of a witch hunt. For example, Professor Kehinde Andrews or Lord Simon Woolley or the Good Law Project, seeing this as a coordinated attack on a significant or symbolically significant black academic. But what is the truth? The Times Higher Education looked into his 2015 PhD thesis and found identical passages with another student from 2009, Paula Zodiac Myers, and the work looked identical. You could also talk about people like Nathan Kofnas, who ran his work through artificial intelligence software. But there's a caveat here. Nathan Kofnas is somebody who really dislikes the idea of increasing representation in higher education, somebody himself who was also dismissed in 2024 in relation to his rigid views about race and intelligence. He's somebody who believes that if you're black or you're white or you're brown or you're any sort of skin tone, then that can determine how intelligent you are. It's not necessarily about your brain, but about your race and your genes, something which is discredited by most modern work in genetics. And this makes people wonder whether or not this really is fair or an attack. The International Center for Academic Integrity finds that there's a degree of plagiarism already existing in students' work, about 30 to 40% if you're talking about undergraduate students. And in terms of self-reported numbers, this drops to around 2 to 3% for PhD students. But it, in meta-analyses, shows up as far higher than that, about 20 to 30%. We know in the UK that black professors make up about 1.1% of the academic body, despite black people making up over 3% of the population. But ultimately, what do you think? Is it plausible to you that he claimed to have run 30 marathons in 35 days with injuries and extreme pain management, that he went and volunteered for a water aid abroad despite them saying that they don't send volunteers there, that he was a visiting professor to certain institutions like the University of Glasgow despite denials, or that many of the claims that he has made have been edited or corrected over time. He says that he is under tremendous pressure and that this is a threat to himself and his family, and that's why he's stepping away from public life. And the University of Cambridge has announced an investigation, whereas the Liverpool John Moores University previously cleared him of wrongdoing. But you make up your own mind. What do you think? Let us know down below. You can follow Novo for more if you found this useful, and support our work from £1 a month on Patreon and help us reach 1,000 supporters.
Okay, so let me explain. Jason Arday has admitted to making some mistakes, but he says he's been falsely accused of being a liar and being a fantasist. We don't know what those mistakes actually were. He hasn't actually said, but people have been deducing from his history what they have been or what they could have been. And that's where we are at the moment. In terms of what happens next, well, he's resigned from his post, but he said that he will return. And this all came shortly after Cambridge announced that they had some new evidence that has made them launch a new investigation.
This is really unfortunate because we've just witnessed an institutional and PR lynching of a man who's had to work twice as hard his entire life. There is a certain level of psychosis that white academics and elites go into at the thought of a black and brown person being let into their environment. They can't sleep at night and they will do and stop at nothing. So the person who first raised these plagiarism claims is Nathan Kufnas. Now, his contract was terminated by Cambridge because he said that if DEI was removed, then all black people would disappear from their senior positions. He's a free speech defender and he's quite a clear racist who believes in eugenics. And that's the idea that black people just aren't as intelligent or as qualified or as excellent as white people. There are white people on Reddit right now who are pointing out spelling mistakes in this man's work as proof that he possibly couldn't be a professor. This is what they're spending their energy and time doing. And honestly, I don't want to hear anything about any nonsense plagiarism claims because these people have a nerve. White academics get to be basic all the time. They can write nonsense PhDs. They can base their entire PhDs on pseudoscience and still be put in the Hall of Fame by these people, seen as the greatest thinkers of all time. They get to be promoted to senior positions without qualification. They get to advise heads of governments, heads of states with no qualifications whatsoever, and they will never receive even a snippet of the scrutiny that black academics and black professionals get. In fact, the biggest beneficiaries of DEI initiatives are white elites, but they just use different language. White elites get to buy their kids' seats in elite schools under the guise of alumni admissions. Because dad went here and granddad went here, you have a free seat. White seniors get appointed to roles because they're mates in the role, even though they're not qualified. We see it all the time. We don't get these privileges. We don't get to be basic and just walk into these positions. You can still be brilliant and still have every credential criticised and torn apart by these people. Anne-Marie Imafedan, she was the most qualified person ever on Countdown. She was still accused of not being qualified enough and being a DEI hire. She was the youngest girl at age 11 to get an A-level in computing. My point is, no matter how qualified or how excellent or how brilliant you are, we will always be challenged and questioned about being in these elite spaces. So I'm not interested in these nonsense plagiarism claims. This man would not walk into Cambridge as a professor without being highly vetted. So at the end of the day, Jason, these people are not the standard. Their institutions are not the standard. The real measure of success is the impact you have and leave on people's lives.
The controversy around Jason Arday has animated some of the most bad faith people. Arday became one of Britain's most celebrated academics, widely profiled for an extraordinary personal story. Recent newspaper investigations have questioned elements of that public biography, highlighting inconsistencies between previous accounts and documented evidence. The story is now another front in Britain's never-ending culture war. Elements of the right are celebrating what it sees as proof that diversity, equity and inclusion is elevating questionable black academics at the expense of white people in academia. Some have instinctively rushed to Arday's defence, not least because many of the loudest voices driving this story are themselves, of course, deeply ideological figures, including one critic who bizarrely refers to himself as a race realist. Among the issues raised by The Guardian and The Times were discrepancies over educational resourcing, the timing of major milestones in his life, and elements of the inspirational narrative that have become central to his public profile. When replying to the allegations, Arday responded to say, "To be honest, I thought you would just believe me." He has since then resigned. To much of the online right, he is now definitive proof that Britain rewards black academics over everybody else. He's becoming, in their telling, the ultimate DEI darling. I think that's a gross oversimplification that overlooks what the overall systemic picture is yet. As we've seen repeatedly, this new grievance politics thrives on partial anecdotes and singular stories to make its case. But the left also has to engage with some of the questions that these liberal DEI schemes like this throw up. There is a left-wing critique, in my opinion, of contemporary diversity initiatives, and it's far more radical and truthful than anything coming from most of these anti-DEI campaigners. Too often, I think DEI functions as a form of elite management. Institutions will recruit a handful of black and brown faces into prestigious positions whilst leaving untouched the economic structures that produce racial inequality in the first place. Representation becomes a substitute for redistribution. Black academics, for example, hold under 1% of professor roles in the UK, despite making up over 4% of the working age population. It's easier to appoint one celebrated professor with a larger-than-life story than to ask why entire communities largely remain excluded from elite education. Until this story broke, I knew very little about Jason Arday's academic work. What I knew, like most people, was his personal story. That in of itself is revealing. We increasingly create anti-racist heroes through exceptional biographies, the extraordinary individual who overcomes impossible odds, the inspirational success story. But anti-racism should not rely on exceptional people. It should just be about justice across the board. It's impossible, I think, to separate Arday's rise from the political moment that followed the murder of George Floyd. The Black Lives Matter movement briefly opened a space for some genuinely radical conversations about policing, housing, poverty, capitalism, empire. As Olufemi Taiwo and many other academics have argued, much of that energy was rapidly absorbed into elite institutions. Corporations decided to issue statements, universities commissioned reviews, consultancy flourished, DEI departments expanded, but many of the material inequalities that fuel racial injustice barely shifted. The radical edge of that movement became increasingly managerial. Against that backdrop, Jason Arday's appointment became something symbolic. A prestigious university could point to an inspirational black professor whilst avoiding the much harder questions about who goes through the educational system at all. One appointment became evidence of progress. Whether meaningful structural change had occurred became secondary. So what comes next? One of the saddest consequences of this affair may be that other black academics are now finding themselves viewed with suspicion for no reason other than sharing a demographic with the category of Jason Arday. That leaves us in a dangerous position that threatens to send us backwards. The left needs to be bold on this issue. Our answer doesn't have to be to immediately defend a liberal status quo, but to imagine something better. If we don't, the inevitable contradictions in liberal DEI initiatives will continue providing fodder for some of the worst instincts in politics. If we're not bolder in our demands for greater equality, we risk things getting much.
Jason Arday, the youngest black professor from Cambridge, has resigned. He claimed to be mute until the age of 11. He left school with 2 GCSEs. He went to uni at the reading age of 9 years old, and he was 20 years old at the time, and of course he was autistic. Let's talk about this case that's all over the news. So I watched Why Did Cambridge Professor Jason Arday Resign on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Make sure you guys follow me, as every single day I talk about interesting documentaries and news stories that nobody else is talking about. So he was exposed by a man. Let me get the man's name. Nathan Kofnas said that this man's PhD was found to have his work was found to be plagiarized and overlap with a lot of previous work. Now, the important thing to note is Nathan Kofnas, who decided to go on a Substack and basically say that this man is guilty of plagiarism, is racist. On top of him being racist, he literally believes that white people are intellectually superior, which is bogus. There have been so many studies around it, and they used to say it's true, but black people have smaller brains, and so on and so forth. So first of all, it was a racist who exposed him. Now, we do not know that he has, whether his work has been plagiarized or not. Cambridge has not concluded that. He did admit to referencing errors, and Liverpool Moors University did some investigation into his work, and they said that he can keep his PhD. Basically, there's not substantial evidence, or you can't say fully that he plagiarized enough to lose his PhD. Let's just say that very simply. A lot of people are arguing that this is racism. They are saying that there are professors who are working in Cambridge who have been guilty of plagiarism, and they still get to keep their posts. The problem is, people do not they hate to see a black person in a position of power. It always has to be a thing of they're the diversity hire and so on and so forth. But we don't even have to get into that. We don't even have to talk about the fact, that he's black and he's been scrutinized by the media heavily, when you don't see this happen to professors, when this happens a lot. Plagiarism happens a lot. We don't need to talk about the fact that a pig's head was sent to his parents' house. This is all fueled by racism. But let's say there was plagiarism involved, yeah? Because some of the things he does say are unbelievable. How was he able to work his way through the system? But if it truly, really and truly, he's guilty of plagiarism, the issue is the system, because that means many professors are doing the same thing and getting away with it and getting into positions of power. Because if really and truly he's guilty, the only reason he has been caught is because somebody hates to see a black man winning. That's the only reason. There hasn't been so much research into other professors and so much scrutiny by the media. This is because of the colour of his skin. There were journalists saying that plagiarism has never been taken seriously in uni. But of course it's going to be taken seriously for a black man. And I've watched so many documentaries on plagiarism, and I remember I read news stories, and professors are saying they're getting very tired themselves, because they are teaching students who don't even speak English, but somehow they're able to get a first class in their university degree. It's not taken serious. You've got obviously students who pay people to do their paper, and then you've got people who come from countries who cannot speak English and who manage to bag first classes, and they write dissertations in fluent, amazing English. Clearly something is going on there, but universities don't care, because at the end of the day, they get money from a lot of these international students. Universities are still standing because of international students. If you stop many international students coming from all those rich countries where they barely speak English, I'm not going to start naming countries because that's a bit rude, but there are countries where people are so rich, so rich, and so many students come from those countries and come to the UK and they cannot speak English. If you now say we are going to take plagiarism seriously, am I saying it properly, and not allow those students to come in and get their first class, the universities won't.
I've now reached my conclusion on Jason Arday, and I do believe that he is massively in the wrong for many, many reasons. What I will speak to is the fact that he is qualified. He has done a master's. He has done all the necessary levels of education to become a professor at something somewhere, right? And he's actually done a version of the job and done professorships at other places before Cambridge. So he is qualified, and in theory, he could be able to do it. What is not working for me is the sheer volume and egregious lies that have gone into his campaign candidacy, his promotion of himself, the selling of his book, right? And it's so ludicrous, some of the lies about marathons with broken legs, autism and not speaking. And people are saying, oh, I've seen you speak, I've seen you act as if normal person, right? And we cannot allow neurodivergence, because I'm neurodivergent also, to be act as a platform for why you are fundamentally outright lying, right? And nobody has said this better than Nadine White, right? And by the way, Nadine White is one of the most important writers in the last 5 years, maybe even a bit longer, 6-7 years. I literally have probably adored about 30 of her articles where I'm just like, you have nailed this on the head. I don't know what she's eating, but I probably actually do know what she's eating. Her first point is neurodivergence doesn't compromise integrity. It doesn't make somebody lie or become a liar. Other factors may inspire dishonesty. Also, Jason should be accountable, including to the same black people he literally verbatim asked to defend him, all while apparently knowing that he lied, right? That part for me is incredibly violent, right? So he had other people risking their reputations and livelihoods, their standing and their bread. Yes, it is that deep. Some signatories to the open letter have been and are still being hounded by sections of the press as I type. So he created a storm for other people who were co-signing him, believing the word of another black person, because we understand what a systemic bashing of a black person looks and feels like and what the impact can be. So at times, yes, other black people do gather and stand behind them, but that knocks the people's desire to do that and want to hold other people
other systems to account, right? And for what reason? Where is the protection, the grace for them? Where is the call to action? As black people, we must navigate society from a precarious position, yet some of our skin folk are still demanding blind loyalty, regardless of the consequences. Is everyone all right?